How was it possible to land a commercial jetliner, a wide-body aircraft, spot on the runway, with zero fuel? Do watch until the end of the video to know the shocking thing the pilots did. The year was 2001, August 2001. The aircraft was an Airbus A330. 4 days before the accident, they found some metal chips in the oil filter during a routine maintenance check. This is actually an indication that the engine is having some problems. But the problem is that they could not find where the metal chips are coming from, and therefore the engineering department decided to change the whole engine. The spare engine was flown in from Hong Kong. When they were putting the engine into the cowling, they found that they could not fit it in. They later found out that there was a service bulletin to change 3 things: the hydraulic pumps, the fuel lines, and the hydraulic lines. A service bulletin is normally issued when the manufacturer wants to change something on the engine part. So now one engine was already modified according to the service bulletin. The spare engine that was flown in was not. So the engineers had to change the parts for the spare engine. Remember that they needed to change 3 things, which is the hydraulic pumps, fuel lines, and hydraulic lines. But they only have the new hydraulic pumps and fuel lines available. They decided to change that but maintain the old hydraulic lines. After installing, they noticed that there was very little clearance between the hydraulic and fuel lines, but decided to dispatch the aircraft anyway. They did not account for when pressure is introduced that both lines will touch each other. Remember this, as this will be super important later on. On the 24th of August 2001, the flight was dispatched from Toronto, Canada, to Lisbon, Portugal. There were 293 passengers and 13 crew on board. The captain was 48 years old with 16,800 flight hours, of which 796 of them were on the A330. The first officer was 28 years old and had 4,800 flight hours, of which 386 of them were on the A330. The aircraft was fueled up and had 46.9 tons of fuel. The aircraft departed at midnight UTC time from Toronto, and, during the first 4 hours, there was nothing strange that was going on. At 4:38 UTC time, the fuel line and hydraulic lines have been touching and rubbing each other like rabbits going at it. After so much rubbing, oh my god, so much rubbing, the fuel lines ruptured and a huge hole was formed on the right engine. With the size of that hole, they were losing about 12 to 15 tons of fuel per hour. To give you some context, an Airbus A330 burns about 5.6 tons of fuel for both engines. The pilots did not notice the fuel leak as the engines were running smoothly. For the A330 there are multiple tanks, the center tank, inner and outer tanks, the vent tanks, and also the trim tanks in the stabilizer. So when the fuel on the wing tanks is decreasing, the fuel from the back will transfer to the front. As the pilots was reviewing the systems during their cruise checks, they noticed that they have lower oil temperature on the right-hand engine, higher oil pressure, and lower oil quantity. Okay, listen up boys and girls. In the A330, the fuel system is the one that cools the oil system. Because now there is a hole, very cold fuel is rushing through the oil filter system, making the oil cooler than it was. The pilots talked to their maintenance control but still could not understand why they were experiencing these indications. Then suddenly they received an ECAM alert. An ECAM alert normally comes out when the aircraft needs attention from the pilots, kind of like when your partner needs your attention. The message that came up was a fuel imbalance. This was weird for the pilots, as fuel imbalances normally happen when one engine is not running. According to procedure, the pilots have to refer to the QRH handbook before taking any actions. However, the captain did it by heart and opened the fuel crossfeed valve. By doing this, he is taking fuel from the left wing and sending it to the right. Remember that there is a large hole on the right side. The QRH stated that fuel imbalances should not be done in case of a fuel leak. Before we continue, do trigger the like button and subscribe to get the latest videos. I appreciate you and will love you for a very long time. However, in their minds, the pilots thought that the indications they were seeing were false, and assumed that the oil parameters and the fuel imbalance was a computer glitch. But 10 minutes later they realized that they do not have enough fuel to continue to Lisbon. And so, they found an airport that they could divert to, which was in Terceira Island, Azores in Portugal. The pilots then asked the cabin crew to check the right engine for any signs of fuel leak. But since the leak is happening inside the engine, the cabin crew could not see them. This reaffirms the pilots' belief that the indications they were seeing was indeed a computer glitch. At 5:59 UTC, the fuel indications shows 3 tons of fuel in the left wing and 1 ton in the right wing. 14 minutes later the right engine flames out. At 6:26 UTC, when they are at 34,000 feet and 65 nautical miles away from the airport, the left engine flames out. Now they have both engines not running. As the aircraft depressurize, the oxygen masks dropped down. Passengers were panicking as the lights went out. The captain, being a very experienced glider pilot, navigated the aircraft beautifully. Once he lined up with runway 33, he is at 8 miles final at 13,000 feet. They were high. How high? So high. Normally the aircraft should be 2,500 feet with both engines running. The next logical step that he did was to do 1 orbit to lose altitude. 1 circle and he would lose about 5,000 feet. And so he would end up at 8,000 feet and facing the runway. They were still high. Holy f***. The pilots then extended the slats and landing gear. In addition he did an S-turn to lose height. They then flew over the threshold at 200 knots and touched down 1,000 feet from the runway threshold.
30, 20, retard. Terrain.
Because the aircraft have so much energy, it bounced on the runway and touched down again. They did not have spoilers and reversers to stop the aircraft. The captain have no choice but to slam on the brakes. The tires locked and blew up. The aircraft then skidded to a complete stop. Small fires around the tires were immediately put out by the firefighters. The captain then decided to initiate evacuation. 14 passengers and 2 cabin crews got some mild injuries from the evacuation. The final findings that the investigators concluded was that the spare engine was fitted not in accordance to the service bulletin. The fuel and hydraulic lines kept rubbing on each other, causing the fuel line to rupture. This then caused a fuel leak. The limited training the pilots had did not put emphasis on handling fuel imbalances, and this caused the situation to escalate further. Last but not least, further training was introduced such as CRM so that pilots can be aware of confirmation biases. I would like to point out that both pilots were incredibly skilled in flying a giant aircraft with no engines running. They even managed to land exactly on the touchdown zone. This is simply incredible. Fun fact is that there is a movie made based on this incident. I hope you enjoy this video as much as I enjoy making them. Do subscribe, comment below, give a like my wonderful fellow humans, and I will see you in the next video.